Hello and welcome once again to the Art in Responsible Innovation series from the Bassetti Foundation. I'm Jonathan Hankins and I have Mireia Bes Garcia from Bristol University and Oliver Langdon from Kilter Theatre with me today. And that rather gives the game away because the topic of conversation is theatre and theatre technique used in responsible innovation and responsible innovation training. And my guests are experts, so without further ado, I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves and fill us in on what they've been doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. Okay. So, as Jonathan said, my name is Mireia. I work in the public engagement team at the University of Bristol. And as part of my job at the University of Bristol with public engagement, we've also started doing some work on responsible research and innovation. And I think it's fair to say that we've always been interested in collaborations with art and artists, and specifically theatre. And it was through that we started collaborating with Kilter. Ollie, over to you.
So I'm the director of a theatre company, and I've been doing that for 20 plus years, but for the last 7 or 8 years been working a lot in collaboration with different researchers at Bristol University and others, kind of translating some of our creative skills and experience into public engagement and into facilitating conversations with the public around responsible innovation.
And why theatre? What does theatre bring for you?
Well, for me, what theatre can quite uniquely bring is a shared experience where an audience can identify with two sides of an argument through a dialogue, especially with the style of theatre that we make, which is quite participatory. So audiences are enrolled in some sense, so they're required to think from different points of view quite actively. We invariably make our work in interesting locations, not in theatres themselves, but ask our audiences to sort of bring down the fourth wall of the theatre and actually inhabit interesting places where, again, they feel closer to the characters and to the story, and therefore are forced to work a bit harder and think for themselves.
Yeah, I think that for us also, there's something about being able to explore futures that could happen in a safe way. And like, I think that's one. The first work we did together was about synthetic biology. If we were to ask people about synthetic biology now in the street, like most people wouldn't know what to tell us. Like they wouldn't know their opinion. But we work with Kilter. We travel into the future, like in 50 years into the future, in a lived situation where synthetic biology was part of people's lives, and they were facing a question, a decision that they had to do. And they took the public with them, and then like all of a sudden, like this thing that is quite vague becomes something like quite particular. It becomes a decision you need to take, and then you are informed, like you have more information about what to do, and you realize what could be like the challenges of this new technology. So I think that this is very important. From public engagement perspective as well. We also found that like it was not only the effect that like the theatre had on the publics, but the effect that it had in the researchers. I think that just bringing Kilter in and asking different questions to the ones that researchers are used to ask themselves, and also giving them a space where they could explore these questions in a safe space was very important, and a lot of our work has continued in this direction.
So I know that you've been working together for some time, so can you just talk us through the development of how, presumably you in some way represent Bristol University, and how you came to build this project?
Together, yeah. I think that well, actually, it's been super nice to be able to work for several years with Kilter, because I feel that it's developed a trust relationship where we can be super honest, like super clear with no expectations. We're also like thinking in similar ways. Like we bring different things, but I think that there is a really good connection now. It all started with this play on synthetic biology. And from that, like when we realized, hang on, there's something here, not only for the public, but also for the researchers. For us, it was an opportunity because we had to do work on responsible research and innovation with researchers, but we didn't really know how to do it in a way that didn't feel, we were telling researchers, you are not responsible, like, and if something goes wrong, like, it's your fault, like, that's not what responsible innovation is, but it's also not the message we wanted to give them. And we found that with creativity and with theatre specifically, because of the storytelling element, we could have like all these conversations. So we've gone from this play on synthetic biology to Kilter coming as residents and working with groups in virtual reality and quantum physics. Then they did some work also like with PhD students, and like the most recent thing we've done is actually develop training for researchers on responsible research and innovation, but it's all done through techniques that come from theatre. And it's not scary, because some people hear theatre and they feel, oh my God, I have to perform. But it is a really good way to make things tangible and people to be faced with decisions, and therefore to start thinking critically about like the impact that the research that we're developing could have in the planet.
I think a big part of the discovery that we made quite early and then have built upon is that our collaborative interaction with researchers is not us coming in, listening to what they do, going away and making a play about it to tell the world, but it's much more of a long-term collaboration, and that the process of getting to the play is at least as important, if not more important in some ways, than the play itself. So we want to really work closely in a creative way with the researchers so that they are helping to build something that they really believe in, that is an accurate representation of where they stand, a plausible kind of scenario from the future that they're happy to put their name against. And in kind of that whole creative process, they're networking with each other, they're thinking in new ways, as kind of using our kind of theatre practice, and we're learning a huge amount as well. As Mireia said, I think, one project building on top of another, we've become much more expert scientists than I ever would have imagined I would be as a theatre maker at this point in my life.
So it's very much a co-production then?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's a co-production with the researchers. And sometimes along the way we've involved other particular kind of target communities. So the work that Mireia mentioned that we did with VR and quantum, we went into a secondary school in Bristol and we ran a series of weekly workshops talking about responsible innovation and then talking about the futures of VR and quantum, and encouraging the young people to kind of imagine the futures that they wanted to inherit or that they could imagine growing up around them. And their input then became part of the script for the pieces that we did eventually stage. And then the kind of journey of collaboration continues even past that performance, that hopefully there's then a conversation which can continue to go backwards and forwards. And I know that those young people have continued to be engaged with those research fields. And I know in synthetic biology they continue to talk long after the play had happened with a kind of a community, a steering group, in fact, that had grown up from the audiences of the play that we staged.
Fantastic. That is the goal, isn't it? What's the structure that allows you to fund these kinds of interventions? How do you go about? What's the starting point?
At the beginning, it was like through an European project, so it was an FP7 project, and there was like money for public engagement, and it was to develop a play. That's how we started. Since then, we've become more creative. I think that we're always trying to find little pots of money here and there in order to be able to fund some of these projects, and many times they are smaller than we would like them to be. But in England, there's something called the research councils, and one of the research council is the EPSRC. It's Engineering, Physics, Science Research Council, and they have money for impact. So for researchers that they are doing a particular research, then you can apply money to develop impact from that. So we've had money from them a couple of times to fund 2 of the projects. And then what else? Where did the money come for the legacy?
The CDT?
Yeah, from like the doctoral college as well. We had some, so this one, it was work with PhD students, but it was the idea, like, although like it had to be transformed because of COVID-19, but the idea was that like the PhD students were doing an internship with Kilter, so that they would be part of the whole development of a play. It needed to change, but they did, right? Like the scripts for short films at the end. It wasn't, but yeah, it's about getting really creative and trying to establish links to things that would make sense, you know. So like we've never seen a call that says, "Oh, I'm going to give you some money like to do training in responsible research and innovation, or to do a theater play." You know, it's always like thinking about how can we shape our project so that we are matching the criteria of this funding pot. But there is interest, no?
I think that the more we do it, the more we can demonstrate the impact as well. So it becomes a more persuasive argument to fulfil lots of different kind of criteria that the funding body might be looking for.
So when writing an application to get some funding, I think that one thing that is really important and it's not always considered is that as members of staff at the university, we get our salary at the end of the month, but this is not the situation with artists. So it is very important that this time is recognized, and like if you can't find a small pot of money somewhere at the university where you can pay for their time, I think that this makes a lot of a difference. And if this is not possible, I think that basically probably minimizing their work at that stage, like obviously making sure that they are happy with it, or trying to cover the cost like once you have the money from the funding, because I think it's something that happens a lot, that people are not really conscious of like the different situations, and like artists are asked to work for free a lot of the time. Also, the other thing is that like to pay them like the right amount of money. There's lots of people that think that like for the artists is about visibility, but you can't really give visibility. So I think it's very important to recognize the work of the artist.
We're very grateful for that. But that does sound also like someone who spends a lot of time thinking about responsible behaviour and responsibility to other people. And yeah, I think that responsibility does exist. And I think that the point to make is that the responsibility that we spend so much time thinking about has actually rubbed off on Kilter, my theatre company. Certainly, like as an organisation, I feel like we have become more responsible innovators in our own field, which is good too.
You mentioned before the EPSRC and the European Commission, and they have, we all have different ideas of what we mean by responsible innovation and responsibility. If you're producing materials, do you have a framework of ideas, or how do you consider that?
There's a couple of frameworks. Obviously, there's the European Commission framework and there's the Research Council framework. I think it's fair to say that we maybe have been inspired by some aspects of each of them, but we don't follow like any of them particularly. I think the way we understand it is we want researchers to be reflective, to be thinking about the research they do, the impact this could have in the future, in the worlds that we're creating, but also like the impact that this could have like on the environment. Being really like aware that their way of looking at the world is one way, it's not the only one, and it's important to have a chat with other people. And also like being aware of what it means to work on research and the conditions under which people are doing research. This opens issues around like integrity, pressures to publish, and then also like specific ethical issues that could be related to particular research. So like there's certain things that you can apply to our research, but if you are developing a software, you may want to check issues of cybersecurity. It depends on the research, and like each of them will have like some more specific issues. But for us, it is about like just being reflective and having the time to think about it, rather than just ticking the box of some themes that are part of a framework. Although like they can be useful to inspire and also like the fact that there are frameworks means that researchers are expected to do some work on that area. So it is a good way to, like you were talking about funding, so this is a good way of just actually being able to fund like some work, because it is an expectation that they have. Again, we see it in a more open way.
And you say that the theatre group, Oliver, has also been infected by these ideas. How does that manifest itself, and how is that perceived?
Well, I think our kind of USP has always been to sort of do a certain amount of responsible thinking, even before we started working with university researchers. But there are some kind of things that have come out of creative workshops. For instance, we've talked a lot with researchers in a load of different fields about an idea they might incorporate representatives from the natural world onto their research team. So we said, go out and find a plant or an animal, get to know all about it, and become a champion for that species. But then whatever you're doing, imagine that is sitting on your shoulder, kind of presenting its point of view about the work you're doing as a stakeholder. You know, if you're going to have an impact on the planet and you've got someone in your team who shares the planet with you, but will think about things from a very different way, then you know you're onto a winner. So we now have a hummingbird, hawk moth, and an apple tree on the board of the theatre company that we can start with about important decisions.
Oh, fantastic! And what would you like to see develop? What would make life easier for you?
Question. To do more ready funding, more opportunities. I think sometimes there's a persuasive conversation that needs to happen even with the researchers to say that this kind of work does apply to them. But in a way, that's part of the job, so I wouldn't want to eliminate that altogether. That's what we are doing. No, what else? No.
I think that something that would be nice is that usually you get funding and you have these deadlines, you know, and like it doesn't allow for the time that is needed sometimes. Mm-hmm. You are creating like a relationship with the people that you are working at, and this is not something that happens from one day to the other. I think that like time limitations from researchers is also something important to take into consideration. But the way we've been working with them has been to do like 6 sessions over 6 weeks, 2 hours a week. It would be nice to be able to continue working with them in a different way, but there's always like the time limit, the funding limit. So, and I think what I would love is that we as universities, for example, we could employ artists to be part of the teams. You know, so that it was not like, oh, we have this now. You know, I think that they, like what you were saying about like you changing your behavior because of this. I think that this has been the same for our team, and I think that having someone that like keeps asking questions from a different perspective would be super interesting, and that this was like a role in the university. I think this would be awesome. You know, because like any researcher could go and just like do like a mini project, have a conversation. You
Equally, it's important not to become swallowed up by an institution as an artist in residence, and you start to speak the same language. Otherwise, you need the different perspectives to bring in. But it would be nice to think, just building on what you were saying, Mireia, it'd be nice to think that this kind of creative, responsible innovation training was a critical part of entry-level academic pursuits, that everybody should know that that's a big part of any research that they're doing.
And what have you got lined up for the future?
Phew.
Well, one of the futures.
One of our futures, our real futures. We've just recently published a toolkit, which has got a whole load of resources available, open source for people to use, kind of creative games and exercises around the different themes that we've developed around those frameworks. Some of them are kind of self-guided things that anybody can pick up and do by themselves. Some require small groups, some require a facilitator. You can do some online, some in the room together. And I hope that going out into the world will kind of generate some more interesting conversations where we might be able to support responsible innovation research.
And who should we send our listeners and our audience to see, apart from obviously your work? What else is there in the world that you find interesting in terms of ethics and responsibility in theatre?
With theatre.
Or with art more in general?
I think artists as a whole have a hugely important role to play with the world in its current condition. That there's a lot of, winning hearts and minds is a part of it, although I think a lot of that's done. The general public are quite motivated, but creative organisations can engage people usefully, can influence behaviour change, and can provide kind of positive routes forward. As we've said already, like a massive part of what we do with Kilter is not linger on sort of doom and gloom apocalypse situations, but to create in our mind's eye positive, sustainable futures that we want to work towards. And so once people have imagined that there's a great place to be on the horizon, then they can start to get in line to make that world come to reality.
I think that the way I work and what I encourage people to do is also like to look for things that look interesting, even if you don't have the words responsible research and innovation and science like all together. I feel that like some of the places where I get most inspiration like are not necessarily in the spaces where I usually work. So I've been quite inspired by there's an institution in I think it's in New York. They are called Creative Time, and for a few years they did a Creative Time summit, and all the talks are online. They are recorded, and it's a lot about like social art. I feel that like from social artists there's lots to learn from theatre, like from I really like going to like theatre festivals or art festivals. Ars Electronica is an interesting one as well. So yeah, I just pick ideas from different places. There's lots of people doing stuff like exploring technology as well, and like even if responsibility is not necessarily attached there, like there may be questions that you have at the end, and I think that if something provokes questions, I think there's something interesting there to explore. So that's what, and then for sure there's other people doing things and probably like exploring responsible research and innovation like under different frameworks or ways of doing. Like I tend to try to go to different fields and see what I can learn from those spaces as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Angelo, as well for filming.
Yep.
And let's carry on. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.